welcome back to a rendition of 70s in Retrospect. And today we are doing 1977, aka Boogie Nights. Yes, 1977 was the year that disco really took off. And speaking of disco, there was the opening of Studio 54 in New York City. And it was open on April 1977, and a slew of celebrities were there, namely, of course, Bianca Jagger, Liza Minnelli, John Belushi, Elton John, Gilda Radner, just to name a few. Of course, Mick Jagger, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Halston, Liz Taylor. And it was opened by Steve Rubell and Ian Schrager. And you can only get past the velvet rope if you are so-called beautiful, the beautiful people, as Steve Rubell would say, "You're ugly and I don't want you in here." How ironic, since he wasn't anything to look at either. Sorry, but yes, it was a huge, it was the place to be. And actually what happened in 1981, Rubell and Schrager were arrested for tax evasion and swindling money. Because they were bragging about how in their first year they brought in $7 million, more than the mafia, and so that caused the FBI to raid them and have them arrested, and they did 13 months. And actually it was reopened in 1981 and by different owners, and it changed hands over the years. And the last, I think in the mid-90s, it was called the Ritz. So that was the history of Studio 54. And of course, one of the top movies of that year that capitalized on the disco craze was Saturday Night Fever. And of course, Saturday Night Fever and the disco craze were where hairy chests and chains were in vogue, and hairy chests were gross. And the porn star mustache, of course. And of course, that movie starred none other than John Travolta, who was kind of a ne'er-do-well, who still lived at home with his parents and his younger sister. And he had a dead-end job in a paint shop. But at night, he'd spend his earnings on 2001 Odyssey Disco, and where he was the disco king. I mean, he was renowned there. And of course, the ladies all wanted a piece of him and so on and so forth. And there was a scene in there where, in the PG-rated version, it's actually where this girl walks up, totally starstruck, and she wasn't all there. She comes up and she says, "Tony, can I wipe off your forehead?" She wipes off her forehead, and they're all laughing, him and his friends, and she goes, "I love to watch you dance, Tony. I just love to watch you dance." He goes, "Hey," his friend says, "Go, hey, take her out for a dance." He goes, "Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's go." And she's like, "Watching you dance." And he does this dance, and Disco Duck comes on. He's doing this dance and does the robot, and then he leans over and she wipes his head, and then he does this. And then the DJ, played by Monty Rock III, switched the music to some Latin. He's like, "I can't dance to this shit." And he goes, "Monty, what are you doing? This music sucks." He goes, "Hey, come on, what are you talking about, baby? See that chick out there? She dancing, man. She grooving." And he looks and he falls in love. This girl who was a fantastic dancer, but she was a snob. He gets together with her, asked her to become a partner with him for 2001 Odyssey, and she agreed, only saying, "I don't want you coming on to me," and just snobby, and he was beneath her, and she was saying about how he was too young, yet they were a year apart. She was 20, he was 19. And anyway, that made history, and they go out and they dance. They go into the contest, and they were picked number one afterward. But what happened was, after they went, this Puerto Rican couple went out and they just sizzled. They just burned up the dance floor. And Tony kind of looks like, oh, that they're way better than us. And when they got picked, when they, of course, won the first prize, he didn't think they deserved it. And he goes up to the Puerto Rican couple, hands them the certificate and the trophy. He says, "I want to give you this. I want to give you this because I think you deserved it." And then, after that, he was always trying to get Stephanie, who was his dance partner, to to fall in love with him so he can date her. She wouldn't have any of it, but he felt she was leading him on, and she may have been. I think, in my opinion, she did have a thing for him, but she felt that he wasn't good enough for her. So he attempts to rape her in the backseat of one of the friend's cars, and then the next day he goes on the subway to her house, and they talk, and they decide to be friends. And in between, there was, a little bit of a gang fight where one of their friends, Gus, says the Barracudas jumped him. He winds up in the hospital, so they go and take care of business, go to the hospital and visit him. And he's like, oh, thanks, James Shelton. Glad to see you back. Thank you. And what else was I going to say? Glad you can join. And so they visit Gus in the hospital, and Gus was like, oh, I'm not so sure it was the Barracudas. So, of course, they get pissed off and saying how his brain is burnt. And Tony's like, I feel like breaking your fucking leg. That's what I feel like breaking. And a lot of different scenes in between, just the disco era, everyday things. And his older brother was a priest. And, of course, his parents compared him to him. And then when he quit the priesthood, the family was in shock. And then Tony says something like, well, if you ain't so good, ain't so bad, and so on and so forth. And the family blames him for driving him off. And well, that's, but I digress. That's Saturday Night Fever in a nutshell. And another movie, which was second highest grossing, was, of course, Smokey and the Bandit. And if you haven't seen it, I need to know what rock you crawled out from under. But any millennials out there might not have seen it. And if you like car chases, that is, yeah, and that song is in this year, one of the best disco song of that era, of that year. And anyway, Smokey and the Bandit, of course, starred Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, and Jerry Reed. And it was about this wealthy Texan with his son. Their names were Big and Little Enos Burdette, and they go and they want to find someone who will bootleg 400 cases of beer from Texarkana back to Georgia in 28 hours. So they come upon the bandit who takes the deal. They offered $80,000, and he buys a loaded, oh my God, the black Trans Am 1977 black TA on advance to act as a blocker. So he convinces his buddy named Cletus Snow, otherwise the Snowman, to transport the beer. They head down to Texarkana. They head out west, and they're ahead of schedule. On the way back, Bandit encounters Carrie, a runaway bride. She escapes. She hitches a ride in his car, and then after that, the car that she escaped in was she was about to marry Sheriff Buford T. Justice of Texas, a senior sheriff, who finds the car abandoned on the side of the road and three guys trying to carjack it. And that's where it all takes off. And she was about to marry his son, who was a real dipshit. And I can see why she ran away. And he harasses the three guys and asks if he saw any black Trans Am come through. And they tell him. And what happens was the chase was all about. Bandit had no idea that Buford T. Justice was chasing him because of Carrie. And they get through a lot of robot blocks, major chases, and it just a lot of antics, a lot of shenanigans along the way. And nobody even knew, the highway patrolmen and the sheriffs never even knew that Cletus Snow was transporting bootlegging beer. And on the way, there was a lot of CBers that learned of the bandit's plight, and they decided to help him along the way. One of them, where they snuck in when the patrolman was coming on the side, they kind of had him hide in between the rigs. And so it was really cool how they did it too. And of course, they make it to it's a lot of explaining. It's mostly a lot of, basic car chasing, a lot of more shenanigans. And as Cletus says they stop, they go over to the Georgia border. They just crossed Georgia. Snowman gets stopped by the motorcycle patrolman. And then Carrie and Bandit come along and come up alongside the cop and distract him. It was with Carrie. Carrie goes, and the cop looks and she does this. And then they distract him. So Snowman, they all get on the road. And what happens is the chase gets even more intense. And what happens along the way, they're almost there. And Bandit notices not only Justice and the other patrolmen, highway patrolmen, and they have a helicopter, police helicopter. So he was discouraged, of course, by the unwanted attention. And he tells Snowman, he says, Snowman, look, we're not going to make it. And Snowman was like, whoa, negatory, son. We come all this way. We do something. We do it. And, of course, Bandit says, hey, it's not you. It's me they're after. They don't even know Cletus Snow exists. He goes, well, they do now. And he said, hold on. And he plows through the beginning of the fairgrounds. He plows through the roadblock. And they get in there pretty much safely, 10 minutes ahead of schedule. Then they wind up, they encounter Big and Little Enos. And he says, yeah, well, where's the money? And Little Enos says, hey, how about Double or Nothing? Snowman's like, how about forgetting it? And then Bandit's like, wait a minute, how about Double or Nothing? He says, yeah, we're going to want you to go to Boston for some clam chowder in like 24 hours or 28, about the same. And Bandit and Carrie says, yeah, you're on. Then on the way out, they encounter Buford T. Justice on the bottom of a little hill. His car had taken a beating. He was discouraged. And so Bandit, Snowman, and Carrie were in one of Big Enos's many Cadillacs, and gets on the CB. He says, you know, Justice, I have to say, I've been chased by the best of them. I mean, I've been chased by many, but I tell you what, you're the best damn. You really got me. If you want, I'm down at the end of the hill. I'm in a. He says I'm the tall one in a white suit, and I got a little pygmy that looks like me sitting next to me. So it was, of course, Big and Little Enos he was referring to. And then he says, Sheriff Justice, I ain't gonna lie to you. He says, look over your left shoulder. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, we're heading on to Boston to get some clam chowder. And he's like, and they take off. And Carrie yells, no hard feelings, Junior. Because she was about to cry. He's like, oh, holy shit. And he takes after and leaves Junior behind. And then that's the end of the movie. Oh, my God. It was the best. One of the best movies of that year. And, of course, I'm not even going to get into Star Wars, which was #1 at the box office. I mean, everybody and their brother have seen Star Wars. And to tell you the truth, after the second one, I think it was The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. After that, it was like nothing else. It's like, or what it was, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, I think it was with Yoda. Then after that, it just got one after the other, after the other, after the other. And, or how about, I like, actually, James Shelton, I like the PG rated one where I like the phrase scumbum instead of some bitch. Where are you scumbum? And of course, the Chinese guy, Sheriff Buford, he has his door open. Banzai! You son bitch! I'm gonna barbecue your ass in molasses! Oh my God, that movie had so many good lines. And anyway, aside from Star Wars, which I'm not even going to get into, I think the one that should have been #1 was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And when I went and saw that when it came out, I was 9 years old, and it kind of spooked the hell out of me because it was just really dark. You know, it was about the UFOs and how the UFOs, what happened was a lot of government officials and scientists in Mexico discovered what was called Flight 19 and the SS Cotopaxi, which abducted several people over 30 years ago. And they encountered several UFOs that were like going down the road like they were cars. And two main characters are involved here. One of them was Jillian Guyler and her adorable little son named Barry. Oh my God, the cutest kid they could ever cast. And in that scene, that was where Barry wakes up in the middle of the night, all his toys are turning on, so he goes downstairs and he hears something. He's like, oh, hi. And, you know, he talking to him all adorable, and the mom runs down and she's terrorized. They're all trying to get in through every which way. And as the toys are on and they're trying to get through, you see the vents try to unscrew, and then the door flies open. Of course, he runs out, little one runs out curious, and they abduct him, and she's chasing after him, yelling at him, calling after him. And there's another family, Roy Neary and his family, his wife and 3 kids. And he sees one when he is in his truck, and it hovers over him, and the electrical always goes haywire, and he gets a little rash on the side of his face, a burn. then of course he becomes obsessed, and for some reason he envisions this huge tower, which they later find is the Devil's Tower, which is out in Wyoming. He builds it out of potatoes, he sculpts it, and everyone begins to notice his erratic behavior, and they become more and more worried. And then the last straw was when Roy takes dirt and tree trunks and pretty much wrecks the house, and he builds it right there, and his family takes off. And on the other side, Jillian also, she paints, she sculpts, she paints this, sketches the same thing, the tower. And Roy is depressed, of course, over the whole thing. Then he finds out on the news about the train wreck by the Devil's Tower, and he looks and he says, wow, that's what I've been sculpting this whole time. And Jillian, the same thing. So they both take off and they run into each other. And on the way, there was a leaking of nerve gas, and they just press on during that warning. And what was happening too at the border there, the army was blocking everybody off, and all the civilians were being apprehended. But somehow Roy and Jillian press on towards the army base where all the UFOs eventually come to, and all the civilians that were curious, it was at the army base, and there was this huge, they communicated with the UFOs with this huge electronic billboard by synthesizer, and the notes they're playing back and forth, they played the first 3 notes, doo-doo-doo, and then they were trying to communicate with the UFOs, and then the UFOs leave, and the huge mothership comes down, and they communicate doo-doo-doo, and then they go boom, boom, and it just blasts everything. And then what happens is the mothership opens, it opens up, and all the missing people from the Flight 19 and the SS Cotopaxi all come out, and they're saying which ones, the names, and what year they were abducted. Some were abducted in 1955, and of course they haven't aged. Being in space, you only age so much, supposedly. And then Jillian sees her little son, little Barry, coming out. She hugs him. She goes, did you see me chasing after you? Goodbye, goodbye. And of course, Roy gets picked to go on the mothership, and he's just in awe. And they, you see the aliens come down and they surround him, and then the aliens turn around and they do some kind of hand signal, and then they take him in the mothership. And actually, in the official movie that came out, they didn't show where he gets in the mothership, and then they had a director's cut. My mom was thrilled. Oh yes, they go on, they show the mothership, and of course they show the inside, and it's just, oh my god, it's awe-inspiring. But I think that should have been number 1, more than Star Wars. I'm sorry, but Smokey and the Bandit was number 2, and yeah, that was a phenomenal movie. But yeah, it was kind of depressing in a way. Mostly, I think the most depressing was, of course, Roy's plight and the family and what he put the family through. It was just so. It was such a bummer. One of my favorite scenes was when Richard Dreyfuss, Roy, is in the bathroom, he's brushing his teeth, and his 2 sons come out with a paddle, and they go, boom, and he turns around and goes, ah, with his mouth full of toothpaste. What a wacky family. And that film, along with Network, which I covered in my 1976, were both selected by the National Film Registry and adopted by the Library of Congress as movies that were aesthetically, culturally, and historically relevant. And both films, and Network was really, both. I think Network was the best 1976 movie, and Close Encounters was the best 1977, along with Smokey and the Bandit. To me, they kind of tie there. And while we're on the subject of the disco era, I forgot to mention on Studio 54, there was a 77-year-old woman that went there, and 77 years old is considered young in this day and age. Her name was Sally Lippman. Hey, Lady Peeps, glad you can make it. Awesome. And I wonder where Lee is. I told him I was going live on 1 p.m., but I started a little early because I was in the mood. So I'm glad to see everyone here. That's awesome. But what else I could say? Oh, yeah, her name was Sally Lippman, and she was known as Lady Disco. What was it? Disco Sally. She was Disco Sally, and she was a regular patron there. So, yeah, in the disco era. And speaking of disco, too, there was a disco song Last year, Andrea True had that song More, 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 but she also followed up. She was actually a two-hit wonder. This one didn't sit as high in the charts, but it went to number 27. It was called New York, You Got Me Dancing. And it was such, I loved it. She's like, so don't you be wet, keep on dancing. I love that song. And I heard, I'm like, that sounds familiar. And then when I had it on one of my disco compilations, yeah, I remember that. So you should check that song out too. It's really good. New York, You Got Me Dancing. And another, not really a novelty, but another hilarious disco song. You got to check this one out too. It's by a artist, soul singer named Joe Tex, who had a song in 1972, which I didn't cover, called I Gotcha. And it was number 2 on the charts then. And that was like, it was kind of like a James Brown sounding song. But this one, the name of the song is called Ain't Gonna Bump No More with No Big Fat Woman. He's talking about going to a disco. This big fat woman, she did a dip and like almost broke his hip. And he's like, I ain't gonna bump no more with no big fat woman. And then he goes on to say, she snatched me out of my seat. She still wanted to get on down. And he's telling her to leave me alone, go find a big fat man. And she did that dip again, and I hit the floor again. It's hilarious. It's such a good song. Made it to number 12 on the charts. Yeah, check that one out. Ain't Gonna Bump No More by Joe Tex. And there is a lot of good music during 1977. There was, of course, the Eagles. There was Hotel California. And, of course, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, which was number 1 for most of the year, along with Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Both were, I think, neck and neck. And Rumors stayed number 1 until early 1978, like January of 1978. And Hotel California, of course, played all the time. And I remember being in my mom's 1970 Bonneville station wagon, and that song would come on. And another one I liked was Leo Sayers' When I Need You. I love that one, too. And, of course, what was it? You Make Me Feel Like Dancing was number 1 earlier in the year. And we would go couple times. When we go to Michigan one time, we took a trip out there, and oh my God, it was the best fun. We go to my grandmother's up in Hillman, Michigan, 5 hours away from Detroit, wasn't even on the map, out in the woods, just real nice little cabin. And that record was played in rotation, and ABBA, Arrival, which I think back and I'm like, oh my God, how sappy some of these songs were. But of course, I loved it. I was 9 years old. ABBA was the group, and Dancing Queen was played a little too much. One of my favorite songs actually on that album was Knowing Me, Knowing You, which was about a breakup, divorce. The two couples were married and they divorced, but they still stayed together, just like in Rumors. Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham had split up, and Mick Fleetwood got divorced, and Christine McVie and her husband was the bass player, John McVie. They both divorced, but and a lot of the songs were about that, which made for, I think, one of the reason actually why that was catapulted to number 1 was because of the subject matter. And who knew such serious and maybe dark subject matter was going to make something to get something up to number 1. Yep. Lady Peeps, I know next year, 78, I'm going to cover Grease. And I know that was number 1 out there as it was here. It charted on across both, on both sides of the globe. But yeah, so those were in heavy rotation when I was growing up. And what else? Foreigner made their debut album, which is fantastic. I think that their debut album, was their best. And they came out with Double Vision like the year before, and then the year after, Head Games, which people slammed, but we'll get into that. And I think Foreigner's debut was just fantastic. Every song, just about every song in that album's good. Not only, of course, Feels Like the First Time, and Cold as Ice always reminds me of that time we were coming back from Michigan into Florida, and that song was popular. And I remember coming home, and that reminds me when we came home, my dad bought my mom a Baldwin organ. And you know what was to creep me the hell out? Was when he put the organ on and you have the pedal, and would you put it on vibrato, this thing that turned around, and you push the pedal down and you hear it going. It sounded like whispering, like this really, really demonic whispering, and it just gave me the creeps. I'm like, no, turn that down. That creeps me out. And anyway, and true, when I was up in Michigan, another album that was popular that was actually released in 1976 was ELO's A New World Record. My cousin played that in the basement, not in the basement, in the garage. And also, of course, he had Kiss. One time I looked at Kiss, an 8-track he had when I'm trying to read the comments here. I remember Star Wars 2, where the old fogies are dead. Yeah. TV edited version of Smokey the Bandit was a farce with the dubbed-in voice. Yeah, I know. Dana, I watched actually Smokey and the Bandit a few days ago. It's like, that's one of those movies that you never get tired of watching, along with the Blues Brothers, which came out in 1980. That's some of those movies that just never get tiring. like some of the popular songs, like oh God, what else do I get to say? Oh yeah, ELO and the Kiss tapes. One time I was in his room, and of course he had the Farrah Fawcett poster hanging up on the wall. Everybody and their brother had that. That was like the highest top-selling poster of the 70s, I think. And he had a Kiss 8-track. Of course, 8-tracks were the in thing back then. And I saw the cover of Destroyer, where they're all over a mountaintop and they're all in the kabuki makeup. I looked at that and wow, I was like, I thought that's really how they looked. I looked and I thought I saw the depths of hell right in front of me. And I think their hardest rocking album released that year was Love Gun. It was a truly hard rocking, but actually they had a rendition called Then She Kissed Me, which I didn't particularly like, but they redid it pretty well. But all the rest of the album is, really top notch heavy metal, glam rock, hard rock, and so that was, I think, their hardest rocking. And and of course the top song of that year was Debbie Boone's "You Light Up My Life." Oh my God, it made me cry. It did. It was just so sappy and so what's that word, saccharine or whatever, and I heard it and just made me cry. I mean, I just couldn't stand to hear it. But and also, of course, I forgot to mention that song Boogie Nights by that band Heatwave. And oh my God, that was so unique in the beginning. It starts off with a jazz, kind of like the harps and like a jazz beat, and they slam into Boogie Nights, boom, and then the beat and everything. It reminds me of like dark, like kind of being in a dark room, and that bridge when they come into party like, can't you see that you know how to do it? Like lights, yellow lights flashing on and off real fast, and like all kinds of like red, green, like strobe lights. Okay, I'm old, my memory's going, but that song and of course, it puts the end. In the end, it fades out to the jazz, and then it fades out to the harp. Very, very, very unique, very groundbreaking. I mean, one of the best disco songs I think ever. And yeah, that was groundbreaking. I absolutely love that. And of course, Lady Peeps, the emergence of punk in 1976. Ramones, the Clash, and the Sex Pistols, who only had that one album, and then I think next year was a great rock and roll swindle, and then Sid Vicious died. I'll cover that in 1978. But one of my favorite punk bands is the Clash. But I think even though their album Combat Rock was their more commercial, I think a lot of times when punk bands go commercial, they think it kills their career. And pretty much after that, they really didn't do. I think they had one more album called Straight to Hell. And then and it was a shame when Joe Strummer died in 2002. He was young. I think it was cancer. I was really, oh my God. I mean, I couldn't believe it. The Clash is one of my favorite bands of that area, punk-wise. And I'm sure there are other 1977. Of course, Sex Pistols, Lady Peeps. God Save the Queen was #1. And I saw this documentary on the 70s one time back in 1995 when they covered punk. And Johnny Rotten and them, they were on a riverboat, and they were right behind the Queen's flotilla, and they were saying, "God save the Queen, she ain't no human being." And the police stopped them, and they're getting off the boat, and Johnny Rotten's like, yeah, what of it? So yeah, that one too. And another unique kind of disco funk soul song was by Brothers Johnson. It was called Strawberry Letter 23, which I never understood. And they say Strawberry Letter 22. Well, what explains the psychedelic lyrics was it was actually recorded recorded on an album by this soul singer who was very little known called Shuggy Otis. And he was a prodigy, not guitar player. He was half black, half Greek. His father was Greek, whose name was Johnny Otis. I think he was some kind of guitar player, singer or something back in the 50s. And he did a superb version of that too. If you want to check that out on YouTube, type in Shuggy Otis, Strawberry Letter 23, and it's just as good. I think it might even be better, but maybe, well, about the same. But the Brothers Johnson did it justice. And the middle bridge, that it just, that's another best soul song of that. Like 1977 was just a great year for movies, music, and TV shows. There are some TV shows I want to cover, not the well-known ones, but there was one called Blansky's Beauties, and I thought it was a spinoff of Charlie's Angels, but it wasn't. It was I can't remember what it was a spinoff of, but something about like Happy Days. Nancy Walker was Richie Cunningham's cousin, and she goes out to Vegas and hires these showgirls. It's basically a movie about showgirls, and she lives in a little house in Las Vegas, and all these showgirls live with her, and that's pretty much what it is. And Scott Baio was in it. He was like the 12-year-old somebody's brother. I can't remember, but he would gawk at all the girls and try to come on to him. And of course, they treat him like a little brother, which he was. He was 12 years old, curious little 12-year-olds. And also there was, children's shows. The Croft Super Show was still on. And this time, instead of Bigfoot and Wild Boy and Dr. Shrinker, they were replaced with Magic Mongo and some other program I can't remember. But to my surprise, and I was really pleasantly surprised that they kept Wonderbug, because that was my favorite, about the broken down buggy, the dune buggy that changes if there's any kind of shenanigans or criminals or anything, turns into Wonderbug. And they fly, and they bust the bad guys, and so on and so forth. And that was a favorite. But Magic Mongo was this genie who always went like this. Woo! This round, kind of chubby, of course. And of course, the main kids in it were like two girls and one guy were the main characters. And in Wonderbug, it was two guys and a girl. And the hoodlums of Magic Mongo were Ace, who was like the cool, the bad dude with the leather jacket. Instead of Ace and Deucey, his sidekick was Dunsey, because he was a dunce. He was not all there. He was duh. So yeah, that was Croft Super Show then. That was still on the air. And there was also a cartoon that lasted from September 1977 to January 1978. I used to watch it. It was called The CB Bears. And that was a spinoff of Charlie's Angels. And it was the CB craze was in full effect then. And the name, instead of Sabrina, Jill, and Kelly, their names were Boogie, Hustle, and Bump. Yeah. And the Charlie was actually a woman. And the smallest one of the bunch, Boogie, was in love with her voice. Oh, little hearts coming up and all that. And actually the three bears were disguised as trash collectors, and they even had Bump even wore, like, they have trash cans on their head, and even Bump wore a Farrah wig. Okay, male bear wearing a Farrah wig. He's in drag. But they go around in this fake trash van, this trash truck that was nicknamed the Perfume Wagon. It kind of sounds a little risque to me. I don't know, but they were, solved a lot of crimes, solved a lot of mysteries. And yeah, I used to watch that religiously back then. And and the fads of the day, of course, were the Farrah-Do. Everyone had to, I would love to myself, if I got the Farrah-Do again, which I had a couple years ago. The only thing is my hair doesn't grow anymore. I think it only grew like maybe a few inches. it won't, it'll have to be cut and all my hair will come off. So I tried to attempt it with the wig that I had on the, when I was dressed up as a 70s chick for Halloween. I did that in my 1975 and it didn't work. A Lady Peeps lead told me, oh, you should ask Lady Peeps. She knows how to do all that. And you know what used to piss me off? Are people this dumb? It seems like twice I went as a 70s chick. I had the Farrah, the big earrings, the makeup, and I had on this 70s child. I got the shirt I'm going to probably wear next week. It says 70s child, and I had these nice black bell bottoms. People would ask me, what are you supposed to be? What are you supposed to be? It's like, really? Who do you think? I should have said, one of them said, oh, Marilyn Monroe. If they would have said Farrah Fawcett, I would have said, yeah, close. 70s chick. I said, 70s child, flipping back hair. I think you're old enough to know. Oh my God, it used to piss me off. I'm one of those people, Dana, you can relate how us Pisces are. Worst sign in the zodiac as far as I'm concerned. I can go on and on and on. People misunderstand us. They don't take us for how we are. It's like they misunderstand. It's like one time I dressed in a 70s kind of, long jean skirt that flares, and I had the boots up to here, like, oh, yeehaw, you're set to go to a rodeo? Love the country look. And another one, I did something with a long skirt, black, with boots. Oh, you got the Russian look down. It's like, you know what? I fucking give up. It's like from now on, when I went my last job, I dressed up because I worked at a taxidermy company. I dressed up as a little sexy pirate. Of course, I couldn't be risque, and I really can't because there's certain things that I'm missing. But anyway, we won't get into that. But yeah, I veered off topic here. But anyway, and of course the fad was the hairy chests and the button-down shirt and the chains and the porn star mustache. Oh, I don't know how any girls found that sexy. Ugh. Oh my God. I look back and I'm thinking, no way. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, it's okay to have, you know, a slight little bit of hair like my husband has, like a little bit here. That's fine. Little bit of facial hair and maybe a goatee or something like that. That's fine. But no. Porn star mustache. No. Big no. And also, oh, and I remember the fads back in the day when slime first came out. It was this green garbage can. It had slime. Disgusting. And I remember in 1977, there was a radio station called Y100 that's still on. And of course, it plays crappy music. A lot of today's music is absolutely crappy. And all sound the same, all auto-tune. Rap isn't rap anymore. It's all, early, and it's just, oh my God. Cardi B, forget it. I don't know how her songs go to #1. All she does is, yeah, and bitch and nigger and pardon my language, but that's what they say. Sorry about that. That's how they do it. I mean, I apologize for that. Believe me, I'm not a racist. I'm just saying what comes out of their mouths. So anybody, please don't report me, or anybody who sees this, please don't, because that's not how I meant it. That's how they say it. I don't think like that. I am not a racist by any means. And so please forgive me if I did not mean that in any way. And anyway, they were giving it away. And like I said, I got way off topic. And congratulations, you won a can of slime. And of course, another fad that I don't remember was clackers. I don't remember that. They looked like they were like on a string, and they looked like those ponytail holders, and you clack them. And of course, they went out of vogue. They went out of style because everyone kept hitting themselves in the eye. They were very dangerous, of course. So I don't remember that at all. I don't remember clackers. I think that's how quickly they were off the market. But other songs I want to mention that are epic, that I think are the best songs of 1977 rock-wise. Kansas, Carry On Wayward Son, and what else? Oh, Manfred Mann's Blinded by the Light. Oh my God, if cocaine had a song, that would be it, that Blinded by the Light, because it reminds you actually of being like on a roller coaster, and like snorting loads and loads of cocaine. And anyway, that was, of course, a remake of Bruce Springsteen's Blinded by the Light, and both are two separate animals. I mean, Bruce Springsteen, you never know, the lyrics were slightly different, and of course, Manfred Mann's version went to #1. Carry On Wayward Son only made it to #11. I think it should have been top 10, but that's just like Eagles' Life in the Fast Lane, which was kind of disco-ish, funk disco-ish kind of. You can dance to that one. I think both should have been top 10 easy. But Carry On Wayward Son it starts off a little hard rock, and then in the middle there's a tempo change, and then it goes back to it's a phenomenal song. Both songs are just, to me, the best songs of 1977, the best epic songs. And other things, and also commercials and products where there was Tickle deodorant. There was 5 different smells. One of them, I think, was like baby powder, citrus, lime, or whatever. And Tickle, you'd see the ladies going, and one's working out doing, so yeah, Tickle deodorant was in vogue. And then there was also, which of course went out like that, was Jimmy Carter was the president at the time. His brother Billy Carter, he had the dark glasses and he looked like a geek, and he came out with Billy Bear. People said it tasted like crap, and I think it only lasted maybe a year. I was really surprised. Yeah, Billy Bear, yeehaw. And also the first MRI came in, was invented. And who knows how much that run back then, but it was probably peanuts compared to now. The MRIs, it's like, yeah, so that was the first MRI, and the first sports bra was invented. And me, I don't need a sports bra. I wish I did, if you catch my drift. But anyway, Lady Peep, she's used to my talk about that. She says, "Oh, stop, you're beautiful." I'm like, no, I'm not, but thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But in closing, let's see. Oh, yeah, I covered the Farrah poster, and of course, Charlie's Angels, of course, were in their popularity still. They were still going strong. And I just remember a lot from that era. And another song that was really sad, and every time I hear it, I think of my my aunt who passed away suddenly 3 years ago on May 25th. It'll be her 3rd anniversary of her death. God rest her soul. She was only 62, my biggest confidant, and she was just very sweet. We were like, she would go to Macomb Mall up in Michigan, up in Detroit, and we would just hang out and just my best. And that song it's called "Just a Song Before I Go" by Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it was only 2 minutes long, but a lot of emotion packed in there. And I listened to that, and it always made me feel sad. Great song though, only 2 minutes, which is a shame. But if that would have been longer, it would have, if they had a little bit more lyrics. But it was basically, I think, about maybe a groupie, perhaps. It sounded like it, about going away on a plane and all that. So it's kind of like, to me, like a groupie. But that reminds me of her, and she passed away suddenly. Found out she had leukemia, went in for dialysis, and it was really excruciating. Her heart gave out. It was just, it made me angry at the same thing, because how could she know? How could she find out all of a sudden she has leukemia, and then this happens? I mean, you wonder if that can count as wrongful death. But I mean, she begged to be put in hospice, and no, the doctors just plunged on and on and on, and that was it. And my mom said it was excruciating. She was screaming, and she never ever showed that kind of emotion ever when she was alive. And it was just a shock. And my uncle still comes down a lot every now and then. He spends months down here, and it's just really sad. So I dedicate that song in her memory. So anyway, hate to I won't end off a bad note, but always remember 1977 as height of the disco era. It had the great songs and lots of fun. Like I said, we were always in I think what's called the tail gunner position. And nobody wore their seatbelts back then. We were all, as kids, going all over the car. No one says anything. Cops don't do anything. We're all in the back. And I-95, waving to everybody, hi. Listening to music, and I'm singing to it. And we always took the station wagon up, like I said, in summer of '77. We went there and we visited my Aunt Marie's house. They had this, my Aunt Marie and my Uncle Chris had this tiny little house and an upstairs attic, which I just loved. And my other aunt had a nice house in Sterling Heights, and they had a huge backyard. It was a school was being built right next to it. It seemed to stretch on and on and on. The one part of the school was like quite a few, maybe 100 feet or so, just from the fence. And so that was fun. I used to love going in the downstairs basement. And oh my God, my Aunt Marie gave me this radio bank. It only played AM, but you put the coins in there, and I used to play the hell out of that thing. I'd sit in all the popular music, and oh my God, I just loved it. Just loved it. And I would record. I would take my tape recorder. This is how I was too, what I would do. And I wish I could have still saved these cassette tapes. I wish I still would have. I take it next to the radio, or like the bank radio, and push it down and record and like flip through, and you get bits and pieces of news. And you know what I always used to call it? This is my weird Pisces imagination. I called it mess songs, like just a mess of like clips and news and all that news bites and everything. And I wish I could have, because that was my creativity back then. So anyway, but this has been a really fun show. I'm glad you guys, oh, that's great, Lady Peeps. I have some, I think back in 1996 when I used to record, they had this, there's a station, what was the station? Big 6, it had flashback. And I used to love the DJ, Bill St. James, and he played flashbacks like themes, like TV communications, or different themes, different years. And I still have those, and I'm glad I saved them. I even put the dates on them. So I have a little bit of vinyl too, but most of my vinyl came from visiting. There was this place called Sid's Records and Tapes. I used to spend an eternity in there getting all this vinyl, and vinyl is actually back now. Isn't it weird? And it's such a marketing. I mean, makes so much more money people spend. They go from vinyl, like, oh yeah, cassette, oh CD, oh yeah, this and that, and it comes around full circle. But one thing I never give up and I never stop wearing are bell-bottom jeans. I'm sorry, you cannot. I remember a couple years ago, some lady says, oh, I don't know if they're in style anymore. I want to say, well, I don't give a shit. Shut your mouth. You will never catch me. I mean, I wear skinny jeans too, and this and that, but mine are mostly flare or bell bottoms, and I don't give a shit. And I'm still in the platform. So anyway, thank everybody for coming, and thanks. What is your name again? James? Didn't catch your last names, but thanks for coming on. I'm willing to get more fans if you can. I always keep saying I'm going to have more topics, but I really never could think of any other topic other than the 70s. But I'm going to start getting some stuff together, because I got 2 more weeks. I got 1978 and 1979 left. And I will see everybody. Just let people know, maybe tell people about my channel if they're interested, if they want to take maybe a gander or maybe even a few minutes and put the thumbs up, have them give a thumbs up, and maybe comment, maybe if they want to subscribe. But if I get more views, that would be awesome for me. So anyway, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day, and see me next week for 1978. In the meantime, keep on trucking and keep on boogieing, and what else? Of course, peace out, or as Dana says, peace in. Bye.